You got a text tonight, or last week, or 3 months ago, from someone you haven't heard from since the last time they needed something from you. Hey stranger, miss you. We should catch up soon. You stared at it. You didn't reply. And then, and this is the part, you noticed that you didn't feel bad about not replying. You didn't feel anything much at all, and that frightened you more than the text did. Because the old version of you, the one who picked up every call, who drove over at midnight, who answered at Tam because you could hear in someone's voice that they needed it, she would have already typed 3 different replies and deleted them all. She would have felt guilty. She would have shown up. This version just watched the notification fade. And you're not sure if that's growth, or if something quietly broke. That question is what this is about. Not the withdrawal. What's underneath it? Here's something nobody tells you about the people who get used the most. They're usually not the most naive people in the room. They're usually the most perceptive. They read the room better than anyone. They catch the tension before anyone speaks it. They feel the need before it's named. And they respond, not because they're weak, but because they're wired in a way that makes other people's distress feel urgent. Like a smoke alarm they can't unhear. Pete Walker is a licensed therapist who named something in 2013 that the psychology literature had been missing for decades. He called it the fawn response. Fight, flight, freeze, everyone knows those 3. The fawn response is the 4th. And it looks nothing like the others. It's what happens when you learn, early, that the safest thing you can do is make yourself useful. Be agreeable. Anticipate every need. Your nervous system made a trade. Being needed was the closest thing to being safe. You didn't decide to become the person who was always available. Your nervous system made that trade long before you even understood there was a trade being made. And so you became, over years and quietly, everyone's emergency contact, therapist, moving crew, TAM sounding board, and emotional search engine, on call at no charge with free overnight delivery. For everyone except yourself. The withdrawal that follows isn't a choice. It's a circuit breaker. A psychologist at Rush University Medical Center spent years studying what happens when people's psychological resources get depleted beyond what they can sustain. He compared it to what the body does in physical trauma, pulling blood away from the extremities to protect the vital organs. The hands go cold. The feet go numb. The core survives. The emotional withdrawal most people call pulling back is the psychological version of that mechanism. It isn't passivity. It isn't punishing anyone. It's the system protecting what's left. Here's what makes this nearly impossible to see from the outside. The person withdrawing often looks fine, calm even. They stopped answering texts, stopped returning calls, and when you ask them what's wrong, they say, nothing. And for once, nothing actually is wrong. Someone wrote about it in a forum post, and I haven't been able to stop thinking about it. People kept asking what was wrong. I kept saying nothing. And for once, nothing actually was wrong. I just didn't want to be there anymore, and I didn't feel bad about it. That was the weird part. Not the pain, the absence of pain. The internet gets this wrong. And not just a little. Every video on this topic lands in one of 2 places. Either, you got strong. Your absence is power. Use it. Or, you were used and you deserved better. Rest. You're healing. Neither of them is complete. Because here's what they skip over entirely. The person who stopped being available didn't only protect themselves. They lost something. The warmth. The instinct to rush toward need. That person, she wasn't only naive, she wasn't only a resource being extracted. Some of that was genuinely beautiful. And it got broken. Not set aside wisely, broken under the weight of being used. Someone wrote this in a comment thread, and it is the most precise sentence I have found on this subject. The version of me they're looking for isn't coming back. I don't miss her the way they do. They miss what she did for them. I miss who I was before she learnt to do that. The grief in becoming unavailable, the private mourning of a self that used to open toward people, is something the empowerment narrative completely erases, and it should not be erased. Because pretending it isn't a loss doesn't make it smaller, it just means you carry it without a name for it. Murray Bowen was a psychiatrist at the National Institute of Mental Health. In the 1970s, he named something he kept seeing in the people he worked with. He called it emotional cutoff. And he did not describe it as healthy. When someone can no longer tolerate the anxiety of a relationship where they've given too much, been taken from too much, they sever. Not because they genuinely differentiated themselves. Because they couldn't. The escape works. It removes the immediate pain. But the unprocessed emotional weight doesn't dissolve, it travels. It follows the person into the next relationship, and the one after that. It becomes a defensive crouch they're still in, 10 years later. The person who goes quiet after being used often spends the next 10 years being unavailable to people who would never have used them. Not that the withdrawal was unjustified, it almost always was. But justified is not the same as free. And yet, the research doesn't land cleanly on one side. In 2023, researchers found a subgroup of people who had withdrawn from relationships and showed no elevated anxiety, no depression, no measurable harm compared to people who stayed socially engaged, not withdrawn and damaged. Withdrawn, and by every available measure, fine. Which means the question is no longer are you withdrawing, it's what kind of withdrawal is this? Harriet Lerner, a clinical psychologist who wrote The Dance of Anger in 1985, called it overfunctioning. One person doing too much, another, by habit or by design, doing too little. A choreography, a dance. And when the person who was over-functioning finally stops, not as a strategy, but because they genuinely cannot remember why they were doing it anymore, the other person doesn't recognize their own role in any of it. They never say I took them for granted. They say you changed. You got cold. You became difficult. You will always be the problem, because the person who stopped dancing gets blamed for breaking the dance. You didn't go quiet because something broke in you. You went quiet because you finally ran out of yourself to give. And those are not the same thing. You don't have to reply to that text tonight, but I want to leave you with a question that isn't the one you came in with. You came in asking, is this healthy, or is something wrong with me? Here's the harder one. Who do you want to be available to when you're ready to be available again? Not the people who called you a convenience. Not the ones who will text in 4 more months with another need. Someone once wrote, and this is the line I keep returning to, I realized I had been available my whole life and had absolutely no idea what I actually wanted. Being unavailable taught me I had no idea who I was without someone needing me. The withdrawal didn't reveal who you are, it revealed who you weren't yet. That's not the end of the story. That's the beginning of the harder, more honest one.